and a level of like vibrancy and volume. So
It's
I
really
think that,
Julia Stiles, and that's it.
give me a chair.
You got it, honey sauce.
Taste the honey sauce.
Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, girlfriend. Happy today.
Man, I'm so excited we get to talk about interracial dating and relationships.
Yes, and our experience of it.
Yeah, yes,
Absolutely.
indeed.
I think that there is importance in sharing both our experiences being in an interracial relationship and also perhaps what anyone else could potentially gain or learn from experiences, and not necessarily do's and don'ts, but just that there's a uniqueness and a unique set of qualities that come with it.
Yeah, agreed. I think that it brings, our individual truths to the center, and we get to spotlight that and have it be really seen and felt by our listeners. I think it's super important. So, no matter whether or not your racial identity mirrors ours, you can find your own truth in what we're talking about.
Beautifully said.
Great. Yeah, so let's start off with just some general background about us racially. I'll start us off. So I am Black American, and my parents are from Michigan. Grandparents are from the South, great grands. Based off of my facial features alone, I get asked often if I come directly from a specific place outside of the United States, like the Caribbean or West Africa. And no, I do not come from there directly. So lineage, there's been DNA stuff and, 92% West and Central African, and then you've got some sprinkles of Eastern Asian, Polynesian, Irish, which is super interesting, but, my folks are Black.
Cheers. Great. Yes, so I identify as white and Jewish, and my ancestry is I am second generation in the United States, and my grandparents were from Poland. I'm, according to my genetic saliva sample, 99.7% Ashkenazi Jewish, with
0.3% Senegalese.
point 0.3% Siberia, I don't know, something,
Yeah.
Asia somewhere
Yeah.
years ago probably. But yes, my both sides of my family from Eastern Europe, Ukraine area geographically. My mom's mom was a survivor of the Holocaust, and
Hmm.
her whole family perished there. And my grandfather came here as an illegal and undocumented immigrant and then made his way to citizenship. And my dad's side was here for one generation longer than my mom's side, but they too hailed from Eastern Europe. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I identify.
I have a question for you. Around the time when we first met, and months later after working together, there was attraction. I'm curious for you what the thought was regarding attract to me.
Inclusive of or related to racial
Yeah,
identity?
yes.
Well, when I first met you, I thought you were really sweet and cute, and you had this little butterfly necklace on. And I was like, oh, she has such a great smile. And then as we got to know each other, right, working together, friendship, etc. Yeah, I mean, certainly I have maybe since ever often found myself attracted to just darker skinned people, men and women. I grew up in Queens and surrounded by very gratefully ethnic, diverse community and population. I just say that in terms of not credentialing, but really more just exposure to people of different backgrounds. And so, whereas just compared, which I'll talk about at some point later, right? My daughter now, we live outside of the city and it's a predominantly white community. And so, just very different exposures to people of different backgrounds than our own. So, yes, so saying that to say that I thought you were beautiful, thought and think you're beautiful. And, yeah, I loved your face and your lips and your smile and your hair and your full body. And can I say that on the podcast?
You can say whatever you want, baby. It's ours.
Okay, great. Yeah. And just was wholly comprehensively attracted to you.
Love, love. Yeah, I would say similarly when I first saw you, there definitely was like, oh, this is my type, right? And you stood up and it wasn't directly connected to race in the least. It was more just the androgynous,
It was
you
the
know,
bow tie.
bow tie, definitely queer. And I was like, oh yeah, the more, masculine presenting. And there was that. For me, my attraction is rarely about any kind of identity other than just an energy, right? So hence the pansexualness. But for you as a white Jewish person growing up in a city that is very white, you were familiar and definitely beautiful, definitely attracted, but the attraction wasn't based on race.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting to say that in because I feel the same way that
Hmm.
my attraction to you wasn't based on race,
Yeah,
right? And also, like, race is always there, right? And
totally.
so my attraction to you was certainly connected to how you look,
Hmm.
your appearance, and your appearance is very much rooted in how you look, which includes the
Yeah.
color of your skin and the shape and, nature of your features and all the things, right? And so it wasn't because of, but certainly that's part of your presentation.
Hmm. How do you think that race plays a factor in our day-to-day interactions?
Together? I love this question. I feel more often that it doesn't play a direct role in our interactions in terms of our general conversations or the things we banter about and what are we doing this weekend, or talking about things in our life and whatnot. However, what we do and how we spend our time and where we go is very influenced by our cultures, right? Our
Hmm.
racial identities and communities and cultures. And so I think it's an interesting question because I think it's both. I feel like we don't talk about race on a day to day level in terms of our interactions. However, our lives are very informed by
Hmm.
who comprises the people we spend time with,
Yeah.
right? And just I think about the different places that you are heavily involved in your community, different boards you're on, different organizations you're connected to, different meetings you go to. And so much of your world and those types of activities are predominantly Black community, right? And largely Black women.
Hmm.
And so while we don't talk about those things every day, right? Your
Right.
life is so informed and infused community.
I think for you, pretty much surmised it in the smaller town outside of New York City
Right.
where you abide. It's very much, similar people, similar experiences, with the exception of some different cultures here and there. However, I know you and over these years to have a wider lens and desire to be more on the ground with everyone, with diverse groups of people versus the people that you are with because that's where you happen to live because you're raising a young person.
Right. Right. And, coming here really largely because my mom was here. And so
Hmm.
really just fuel to go close to my family. And
Yeah,
this
and
is where they were.
I think that's an important point as far as family goes. You know, in general, Black families tend to be very close knit, and connected in different ways, whether or not it's yearly coming together and doing the things and everyone knows everyone and you see how you're connected, whose last name is what, cousins, you play cousins, all of the things.
Mm.
However, I think my experience of your family is particularly close. It's really interesting to experience. Would you say that this is your family, or do you think that this is, Jewish families in general? Yeah, what would you say?
I would say
Speak
that,
for the Jews.
yeah, I mean, exactly. I can only speak for my experience and maybe for some others, but I'd say
Yeah.
that there is a typicality amongst Jewish families,
Hmm.
and maybe even I would just say like New York Jewish families because
Yes.
it's different everywhere, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think my family, I've always been very close with my family,
Hmm.
and it's also, I mean, and I think so living close to my family and, every weekend, my life includes some sort of family gathering, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Tons of family gatherings.
very integral to my existence. And I think, that was a debate deciding to move up here was, do I want to be in the city where I'm going to be surrounded by things that feel important to me and people and food and culture and exposure and diversity and, have a child in that space, which all really resonates, and also the logistics and practicality of having family 5 minutes away and having the support and the help and the assistance and the connection and access to, my child gets to be around her grandma all the time.
Mhm.
And just weighing out it's all important and it's all important in different amounts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's sort of another branch of conversation, right? Of our children and what they're learning and all the things.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that that's probably, when we're talking about not just our day-to-day experiences, but a question of, what has it been like for each of us to be part of each other's families, or spend time with each other's families in different occasions or events, or different events that I've accompanied you to in your neck of the
Hmm.
woods and you accompanying me over here, and just, really what that's been like for us. Because to me, that often highlights, like, not that, it's ever not there, but just it brings more spotlight, I think, to the interracial relationship, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that. What's been your experience in different events or family life with
Yeah.
a Black family?
So I love it! Exclamation point. I think is it accurate? The first bigger family event I joined you with was at a family Thanksgiving.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. And so that was a first family Thanksgiving with you and your family.
Hmm.
And, so the food, the dynamics, the conversation, the energy, right? And just, I'd say the food stood out the most as different from
Hmm.
my family Thanksgiving. Yeah. So just certain foods that, you pointed out as more, your family tradition, and also maybe like more Southern tradition, and different root vegetables and greens and the different choices.
Black.
Yeah.
Black American soul food. Absolutely.
And like the first time I had stuffing that was legit good. Like you're like, this is what was you called it, dressing. It was more like dressing than stuffing.
Yes, but there was both. There was dressing and there was stuffing.
Okay, so the dressing is what was really good. I've had some stuffing and
Yes.
I like the stuffing my mom makes.
Yes. If this was closer to that Thanksgiving, I would be quizzing you on the difference between dressing and stuffing, but I know it's been a minute. So
Honey sauce, honey sauce.
it is the honey sauce.
Wait, you need to put that link
I will
in
put
the
the honey,
podcast if
I
you can
will find the honey sauce.
find it. Great.
Taste the honey sauce.
Wait. We can't just gloss over that. We have to talk about what that is. So, you know the memes that come out around Thanksgiving?
Taste the goodness of the biscuit with the honey sauce.
It was like white versus black Thanksgivings, like
Yes.
literally, right?
That honey sauce on me. I don't like the way it tastes with my chicken wings.
So we lovingly have given Kyla the honey sauce nickname. Just
Although
me and her, not
we
the
haven't
family.
used it in a while. It was definitely holiday,
Yes,
oriented. So
yes.
maybe we'll bring it back. That's so fun. Yeah, I mean, so that was the first sort of family experience. And then, right, just being some of our visits in Michigan, in Detroit, right, going to a theater, going to a fashion show, going to different
Yeah.
venues where out of 1 to 2, 300 people, right, I'm one of maybe 5 white people.
If that. Yeah. You've
That,
been the
right? Maybe
only
in
a
that
couple
theater,
times.
I don't
I
remember
think you're
any
it.
other white people there. And
You
at
were
the
the
fashion show, there were some, but not really, not many.
Yeah. At the theater you were definitely solo in the white delegation. It was just you. You're holding it down for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of me wonders if I should feel uncomfortable. And I don't believe in the shoulds or shouldn'ts around it, but sometimes it occurs to me because I'm like, no, I don't feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And the part, like the social worker brain in me is like, wait, am I acting privileged? Is that like from a place of privilege that I don't feel uncomfortable? Do I feel any kind of entitled? Like, is there anything checking myself? Is there anything going on that makes it bad for me to feel
Hmm.
comfortable? But I think that the majority of, anywhere that I could potentially feel uncomfortable, I don't because I'm with you
Hmm.
and I'm comfortable with you and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with us and our relationship. And, I think that there's a piece of me when we go to spaces like that where it's like, well, you know, I'm curious if other people are thinking things or wondering things or if it's, and not as in I'm so important I should be noticed, right? But
Hmm.
just like people notice, right? Like
Yeah.
when I look around a room, I notice how many black and brown faces there are if they're not many. So,
Well, I would say that for you in general, part of what allowed this relationship to even take place is that there was a certain level, like a default to your natural way of being, where you had the awareness, the cultural experiences to a certain extent, as well as your previous work, the foundation of your work as a social worker
mhm.
to put these things into practice in a way of being that allows you to just show up where it's not, oh, do I need to say this, do this, be this? It's very much a part of your identity based off of lived experiences. And I recognize that you're always allowing yourself to continue to learn and you're open to learning and
Mm,
insight or even if there's been like a challenge that we need to talk through some
right.
stuff. But I think in general, like there's not been this rehearsed nature, and so it would make sense that you would be very comfortable in these spaces.
Hmm. Yeah. I would add to that too. Thank you for part of what I feel comfortable around when I'm with you, whether we've been to parties, we've been to birthdays, we've been to your birthday,
We are cutting the cake.
we've been to weddings, we've been to these in these different spaces, and my experience is a liveliness and a level of like vibrancy and volume and I don't know, just there's a magnitude of energy that is
Hmm.
very distinct and different from a party of white people. But I think the energy I've experienced when I'm with you in those spaces, there's a sense of just like everyone can just be who they are.
Hmm. Definitely.
And like that's just different and there's a sense of, and I don't know that it's not necessarily accepting of me as a person or as a white person, but just
Come as you are.
from the external to the internal, right? Just like
Hmm.
different shapes and sizes, what people choose to wear and how they present themselves, the showing up, the dancing. The dancing is obviously a huge part, right? Just like the
Hmm.
musicality, just such life. There's just a lifeness to the places that I have been to with you. that so speaks to my soul, and just speaks to like I can be who I am, which I don't not feel that when I'm with my own family per se, but there's no doubt like a stifferness to, forget dancing. My friends can dance because I only hang out with people who can dance. But, like there's no comparison.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is an energetic difference, and you articulated that really well. And in general, I feel a lightness that comes from, being in Black spaces and levity and shared understanding and all of that. And I think what's interesting is like in the love, like to compare, right? Being in the white Jewish spaces with you all, it's very much like love first, and the love that you all have for each other is palpable. And so I've never felt uncomfortable in those spaces. I've always felt extremely welcomed, and not in a performative sense, very true to you make my daughter happy, you make my, whoever they are to you, and hence me happy, like where just come on in and just be who I am. And so that's been great. And because I grew up in white spaces, there is no shifting in my way of being that I need to do. This is how I am.
Right. You're consistent.
And yeah. And yes, there's code switching when I am in Black spaces, and I'm less, what word goes there? I'll just say I'm less whatever,
Yeah,
and
there is a word, but when I've been with you in other like predominantly Black spaces, I don't actually like I experience you to, it's never like who's this person,
exactly,
right?
yeah,
Like this is not the person who shows up with me or with my
right.
family, although you will use more phrases or,
Uh-huh.
like shared language, right? That is not my family's, or community
Right,
language per se,
right.
right? And so that will definitely be more present, but you don't necessarily like talk different and act different.
Hmm.
Although I wonder, if you experience a different level of ease in your personhood or not.
Yeah, I definitely think that in those times when I'm with predominantly Black people, there is there is less thinking that's involved. It's more just like I'm just really in this state of like relaxation and observing. And but I think that the difference in white spaces is that there is a need to think about safety. And I'm not speaking specifically about with your family at all, really more so just the difference of being in Black and white spaces. And so there are definitely things to consider. But yeah. So the clips that you just watched, there are some clips from my sister's wedding. There are some clips from me at Passover dinner with Kyla and her family, and just some of the different cultural experiences that we've had with each other. So much fun was had. Very unique experiences, very different experiences, as we talked about.
Yeah. I wanted to add to, not about the clips, but just thinking, just what we were talking about before and being in, let's say, predominantly Black spaces, predominantly white spaces, and levels of ease or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the inclusive, like the intersectionality of being queer also
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
those spaces for me, like within white spaces, let's say, like I also live in a community here, while yes, predominantly white, is predominantly not Jewish and
Mm-hmm.
is predominantly heteronormative married couples,
Mm-hmm.
none of which I associate with or relate to,
Yeah.
right? And so, there's a different conversation of, Jewish people even, being accused of like playing the Jewish card as in like they're less than fully white or therefore, are minorities. And there's so much to be said in that conversation. And so not from that place, but from there's a cultural difference, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I can be in a room full of white people and I don't feel more comfortable because I still don't really connect with the people who are there. by nature of how I live, my queer identity and my Jewish identity,
Yeah.
right? And so if I'm in a room full of Jewish people, whether I know them or not, there's definitely more like what you described, that sense of like, I don't have to
Hmm.
explain myself. There's like kind of just, obviously we all have different stories, as do, we all have different stories and pathways, but there's just a shared history, right? And a shared, like, we kind of get each other on a different, on a
Hmm.
unique level. And
Yeah.
same with queer folks too, right? There's a different level of existence in the world that we can connect on.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Being queer in Black spaces, we kind of talked about this earlier on in some of the earlier podcasts, but, me not minding slash enjoying challenging the adults that I've known since I was a little girl with the like, you thought you knew me, but
Right.
you actually did not, and this is who I actually am. That
Hmm.
is enjoyable to me, to be an individual that is bringing learning to people.
Me too.
And
You are a bringer of the learning.
yeah, but it hasn't been always like super comfortable, super easy. There's definitely been moments, and we've been in experiences where there's been challenges there.
Hmm.
Nothing overt, nothing discriminatory, but
All right, but
as
there's an energetic, like there's a
yeah,
feel of, oh, like let's just
yes,
get through this. You know?
exactly, exactly. And like I love that. I was just on the phone with my stepmother wishing her a happy birthday a couple days ago, and she's like, "How's your friend?"
Right.
It's still the proper thing for older Black people to say is refer to them as your friend, and it's wild.
Right.
But
And she totally knows who I am to you
yeah,
and has embraced me, like when I've seen her and
totally.
yeah, that reference.
It's so good.
So you were asking before about challenges.
Yes. Yes. What have you experienced as any areas where you felt as though that there was a challenge based off of something related to race?
Yeah. So the immediate thing that comes to mind for me is around my daughter and sort of some of the first times that you visited here and spent time with her and her with you. And I remember being really concerned and worried of what she might say or
Hmm.
do in relation to you. Just,
Yeah.
right? I mean, she has seen black people before, but
Hmm.
she, hasn't spent loads of time with people and, in different family structures or
Hmm.
backgrounds, unfortunately. And so, whenever I remember early days, there'd be conversations I'd have with her about things to say, things not to say, not to touch your hair, to ask
Hmm.
permission, which with me, for her too, is that's already part of a larger, in general, consent conversation, right? We don't touch people's
Hmm.
bodies, nobody can touch your body, right? Like there's already a consent conversation, and so it just transfers. So I think early on, right, she asked you many questions about your hair, and she commented on like your face, and I was like, oh God, and I think it's like I know you, and I
Yeah.
know that you can take it in stride and understand it comes from like an innocent, curious place.
Hmm.
But even so, I also was concerned that, I'm like, oh, great that you think I'm great and I'm, aware of the things, but uh-oh, like maybe I'm not, right? And
Hmm.
maybe I have a lot more to learn than I thought I had. I know I have things to
Hmm.
learn, but maybe I'm even more behind than I thought,
Yeah.
based on how my child is showing up or representing,
Hmm.
right? And so that was some that's like the first thing that comes to mind was really like learning from you how to best teach her about
About me as a Black
you.
woman.
Yes, yes, about you as a black woman, about black hair, right? Like
Hmm.
things that, I have learned, but like, teaching her about it and how does that get talked about?
I think for the most part, the experience with, the younger self that she was at the time,
Hmm.
number one, because I come from a background of being with children and teaching children, I
Right.
understood how much is just children in general, how much is, not, children that are not Black and interacting with these differences. And none of it for me was ever offensive. It was just, this is, this unique child. So I enjoyed it. It's all part of the general learning and I think
Bringing
curiosity. Yeah, and there are ways in which people can be offended by it, and they're well within their rights.
absolutely, understandably.
Yeah.
And I think too, for me, right, I try to be conscious of, you know, not positioning you where you have to be the
Hmm.
educator, right? Like
Yeah.
that it's all on you to do even though you're a bringer of learning, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you want to be in all
Yeah.
spaces, right? And around all topics and things, especially as it relates
Hmm.
to just your personhood and identity, right? But also wanting to make sure that I'm I'm teaching my child
Hmm.
ways that feel in alignment.
Yeah, that's huge. And I will say that for people that are in interracial relationships or considering it or whatever your experience has been regarding them, I think in you as a partner in general, I know that I'm able to count on you to bring a certain level of advocacy
Mm,
to our relationship, which
mm,
is extremely refreshing and pretty much the only way that for me as a person of color, I could continue in something long term is
mm,
knowing that I can count on my partner to be that individual. We just had an experience a couple weeks ago where we're on Zoom and someone that we thought was, a safe individual and was embodied some of the same beliefs that we did not. And, Kyla was the only other person that wasn't a person of color on the Zoom. And she was like, hold up, like, this is what you get to bring to the place, to the space. And having that be, just natural for you to recognize the space and the privilege that you have, the space that you occupy, and that like you get to be that person that steps up is, it's just so important. It really is so important, especially now and probably forever. You're welcome.
I'm here for all of it, from before I was born till after I'm no longer here to just
Yeah, girl.
absolutely, right? I mean, I think just the fact that we are what are we in 2025 and like we're still talking about interracial relationships as something that needs to be talked about,
Hmm.
right? And again, we get to always we should people around the world like we should all always be talking about our similarities, our differences, our cultures, how we can all enrich each other, how the world is a beautiful, diverse place. However, right, like conversations are so often not celebratory and have obviously been so divisive. And so it's even, I don't know if this is real, right? I mean, but obviously is there going to be rollback on like gay marriage, on same-sex marriage? Is there going to be rollback on interracial marriage, right? Like
Yeah.
once upon a time that was illegal.
Yeah.
And now and then it wasn't. But like that it's, you know, we know where that can go.
Hmm.
So yes, it's important to be an advocate and definitely own. I think it's so important for white people in interracial relationships. I mean, we could say this about any two different cultures and races, but if one person is white, that person really needs to be aware of the privilege that they occupy.
It's not even like a need, like it's a must. It's not even negotiable. And I think that is
Mm,
really some of the ways in which people have been in a relationship or married, for X number of years. And then when it comes to like, here's this very much, harmful
mm,
situation that has happened, and my person doesn't even recognize any of it. Like they don't know the things.
yeah.
It's alarming. And so the importance of doing your own work is critical as a
Yeah.
white person.
I've definitely worked with some couples that come to mind where usually like white and black
Mm-hmm.
people in the relationship, and where, I'll ask about racial and cultural and ethnic identity and experience, and, just putting it in the conversation, naming it, putting it in
Mm-hmm.
the room as like to normalize it as well. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh yeah, we don't really talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just even thinking of this young black man I work with and his white girlfriend, and talking to him about, I don't know what it's like to be a black man, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but I academically, if you will, right, and intellectually understand the differences between the space he occupies in the world and the space that she occupies in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways in which she wasn't understanding him
Yeah.
and his experience, but not trying to.
Right. And how that contributes.
Right, exactly. So just the, oh, well, we don't need to talk about it. And it's like, well, you don't need to talk about it every day, but you do need to talk about it if it's not known, right? If she's calling you an angry black man because you're expressing your feelings, that's a problem.
That's seriously a problem.
Really big
Yeah.
problem. So yeah, just I think that awareness is so critical. And if you have an awareness that you're not aware, that's a great start, because you get
Mm-hmm.
to learn what you need to
Mm-hmm.
learn, and there's no shortage of learning.
Indeed.
Can I reciprocate that question?
Sure.
Not that you have to answer if you don't have one, but is there an area or experience that you have found to be challenging, or that was a challenge that we navigated? Just repeating the question you had asked me earlier around my view or experience of there being a challenge related to racial differences that has come up in our relationship.
I would say for in the time that we've been together, there was, because race hasn't always been a major topic that we, talked about on any kind of regular basis. When the topics of race would come up, it's really seeing like how to approach it with you. And once I understood that, we could talk about anything, wondering, this is so tricky because it's not necessarily, it's not 100% a race thing. It's like I experience it as like your need and desire to get things right or to not have done something wrong. And so what I seem to bump up against is like the you know that side of you that can be in your head versus be in your heart.
Right. And I think, like you said, that is not specific to our racial identities and
Not at all.
differences. However, when the content of the moment or the experience of the moment happens to be something connected to race or an experience you've had as a black person, and I'm in that mode, which is my, perhaps a somewhat consistent mode of wanting to not be wrong, or
Verdant.
want to, et cetera, yes. That in those spaces it can present as more challenging, where it can feel like I'm not seeing you, or I'm not, where I'm even questioning, or
Mm-hmm.
potentially even can feel like I'm invalidating your experience as a black woman having had such and such experience.
Yeah.
So when that is the content and the particulars, and my regular mode enters there, I
Yeah.
think that then it becomes more feeling like I don't know if you would call it a microaggression in those moments, but there's like a feeling of the not understanding.
Yeah. It's not, it doesn't feel like a microaggression. It's just more of a like, what are the hurdles that I need to jump over in order to reach you in this conversation? And which, again, are similar hurdles to not.
Topics. Right, but I think, but this is, this kind of speaks back to the, where and when do you not want to be the educator, right? Like to be able to jump over hurdles. And of course, I appreciate them because I need to be reached in a way that I can't even reach myself, right?
Mhm.
And you have a gift and skill to find me, right? But
Yeah.
then again, if and when it's around identity, or, a shitty experience you've had somewhere in your,
Yeah.
in your world that you're just telling me about, right?
Hmm.
That then in those cases, I imagine it would feel much better to never have anything be questioned, right? And I don't know if it's that I'm questioning you, but whatever it is, that there isn't tension or
Yeah,
something coming up.
exactly. I
I
agree.
understand.
Great. Amazing. Yeah, this has been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. How are you doing?
Yeah, I also, um, I didn't think I wouldn't enjoy this conversation, but I have enjoyed it perhaps more than I even thought I would. And I think because we don't hone in on it generally and
Yeah.
spend a concentrated amount of time, I think that there is actually, I mean, again, not surprisingly, but there's so much we can speak to and share and just point out as part of what it's like to be in this relationship with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Before we conclude, would you say there are any particularly funny things that are
Mm.
noteworthy that we've experienced?
Well, I think this is a good time to point out BM and JM.
Yes, tell us about them.
So, just our natural way of being, we both have mama energy, and mine is, we call black mom, and we call hers Jewish mom, in ways in which we see each other and care for each other. So, it'll be a text like BM says, for example, to remember to do this, JM says to remember to do that, and it's super sweet.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, like from honey sauce
A honey sauce.
to, like this is hip hop.
Hip hop is this: 1, 2, 3, 4, hit, ah, and ah.
Like
Well,
whatever.
to be fair, it's kind of like there's a lot more things that I think you as the black partner makes fun of your white partner about that I can also
Totally.
make fun of myself about,
Yes.
that there's not a making fun of you as a right as a black person,
Right.
right, which I think
Yeah.
is fair. I think that's
There's
a good
no
way.
equivalent.
Yeah, there's no equivalent. And I mean, I think white people deserve the teasing that comes their way around these things that we tease them about, and it's really funny. So
It's
I
really
think that
Julia Stiles and that's it.
give me a chair.
You got it, honey sauce.
Honey sauce.
Thanks, BM. Yeah, so while we're not sitting here doling out advice, I do think that, if I were to boil it all down to a couple of, major qualities that I think are important for people to have when they're in interracial relationships, on the lighter side, I think that having a sense of humor and a levity and an ability to really honestly like poke fun at the lighter things of each other and differences in
Yeah.
culture, right? In a respectful, of course, way. And not even on the heavier side, but just on the real side, so much of what we've talked about of having done some racial identity work, particularly for the white person in a relationship, and having the capacity to have the conversations, right? To be in the conversations, to hear the experiences that are being had, to show curiosity and interest,
Huge curiosity and
and
interest.
be open to learning. And I mean, it's not that a black partner doesn't have things to learn about a white person's experience, it's just different. It's not comparable.
It is different and important to state that all of the Western world is built by white people. So we know it. We are
Right. By
fluent
default,
in
you
white
have not
people.
had a choice. Like part of your survival has rested on you having to learn white culture, white speak,
Yes.
white things. And white people have had the privilege, if you will, of being ignorant about it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fly if you're going to be in a relationship
Yeah.
where people are of different
Or
backgrounds.
even just a good human. How about that?
Of being a human. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, honey sauce. I love you so much.
I love you so much. Give me those something. I don't know. Okay, you can erase.
Yeah, I mean, I just love that honey sauce gets a reprieve like 6 months away from Thanksgiving. So good.
All
All
right.
right, darling. Love you.
Love
Goodbye,
you,
girlfriend.
girlfriend. Talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us on the Love Beyond Limits podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation,
Please feel free to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes.
Be sure to follow us and join us next time.
I might do. And I have to pay.
Okay, we gotta do it. Be sure to follow us and join us next time as we continue to break boundaries and celebrate love in all its forms.